Hello and welcome to our next interview in the Beyond Boundary series. Today we are joined by James Orchard, CEO of QBE Ventures. James, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. It's great to be here in Sydney with you.
Beautiful Sydney.
Beautiful Sydney. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
So we are going to get into a little bit about QBE Ventures, and I'm keen to learn how you guys are structured, the innovation that you guys are doing around the world.
Yep.
And also from a man who has lived in both the UK and also Australia.
Yep.
I'd love to get your different perspectives on that kind of international scene.
No worries.
Starting off, tell me, who is James Orchard? How did you get to become a CEO of QBE Ventures, James?
Yeah, it's a grand title, I can tell you that, and I pretend to play it back, but I do love it. I have had about 10 years now in the innovation space in total, the last 5 of which have been with QBE Ventures. I have an absolute privilege of leading this team. It's absolutely fantastic, the role we get to every day. But my background predominantly was in corporate strategy, corporate M&A. I really liked working on really big, sort of meaningful problems. I loved strategy work and creating a narrative around a particular problem and how we might solve it. I was working in a strategy function for Insurance Australia Group, and I just got a tap on the shoulder one day to start to work on a new idea within the group about how we might be able to centralise some of our digital and technology teams, start to play more in the innovation space. And I got to work with the likes of Ron Arnold and Peter Harmer to develop Firemark Labs, Firemark Ventures, and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, if I'm fair.
Sure.
But I was lucky enough to be surrounded by lots of people who did know what they were doing. And over the course of 5 years, we had a lot of fun, and we created, I think, something that really had an impact across the group. And then after about 5 years, I got the tap on the shoulder from QBE, and there was just this fantastic opportunity to look at how we can start to embed much more strategic value across the business, and working for a truly global company that across the investment and the build side was just too good to turn down. So for doing that, just celebrated my 5-year anniversary with QBE and loving every minute of it.
Oh, congrats. So the Ventures, there wasn't a Ventures team when you stepped in? Or,
no, there was.
Okay.
Yeah, there was. So it was established about 3 years before I joined. So I joined just prior to COVID and at the beginning of 2020.
Yeah.
The team started about 2017. I made a handful of investments, and they were good investments actually. But it was really, I guess, at the starting point of insurtech. Mm-hmm. And while they made some really, really good investments, the question was always around how can we get much more strategic value from those investments? How could we really improve how the portfolio works with the organisation? And so that was the turning point. And so that's when I was provided with the opportunity to come in and build on that strong foundation that Ted Stuckey and the team previously had established.
So maybe all these names I hadn't appreciated the connections to. I've met with and talked to over the years, but hadn't realised they were there as part of the origin story.
Yeah.
And tell me, so roll forward to today. So what is the shape, size, structure?
Yep.
How are you guys set up as a function?
Yeah, so we're a global function with a global mandate. Mm-hmm. So we sit under our CFO, and we have done pretty much since the first day I joined. We have a team of 10. And that is stretched across sort of, I guess, 3 capabilities: the investment capability, technology, and strategy and partnerships. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so while each member of the team has their specialization, we tend to operate very much as one. We have team members in New York, in the UK, London, and in Sydney, where we're headquarters. So the bulk of the team are based here in Sydney. And we've been very deliberate in how we've set up the team. We've been very specific around taking a multi-pronged approach. So it's not just making investments and then hoping the business will start to use them. We've spent a lot of time listening to the business, understanding the business. And so therefore, to really drive that strategic value, we've invested heavily on team members who have the right mindset, who are comfortable working with the business. And it's not all about just going to seek technology for the sake of new technology. And so while we're centrally positioned in the group, we do have a very regional focus in how we go about day to day. So we spend a lot of time with the business and have really centered, I guess, the core facets of the team around driving that engagement back into our core.
And then how do you strike the balance between, so you talk about sort of avoiding technology for technology's sake, yet equally you have to have an eye on everything emergent that's coming through from a tech, from an innovation, from a, I don't know, new business models, whatever it be. How do you strike the balance of keeping track, scouting opportunities around all the shiny new stuff with sometimes, I imagine, very practical business requirements, and marrying or also bridging both of those, because that can't be an easy position to be in either.
No, it's not. And I think, if I sort of take a step back around how we set ourselves up in the context of the broader organization. So I'll probably answer that question from that perspective. So in QBE, we don't have a discrete innovation team per se, right? So we have a collection of folks from right across the business who might have innovation as part of their day-to-day. So in risk, we might have a head of strategy and innovation as part of the risk function, or we might have an innovation role in claims delivery or something like that. So we don't have this discrete capability. And as such, we rely on, I guess, the community of folks from across the business. And together they come, we sort of call them the coalition of the willing, right? They come together and they're very much driven by not just their day-to-day role, but their passion and their mindset and how they generally approach problem solving, right? And so we rely heavily on this community as a conduit into the business, as a champion of, I guess, more of a growth mindset, if you like, into business. And so if we think about sort of, I guess, the spectrum of innovation, so we've got, on one hand, or on one end of the spectrum, you have a sustainable, sort of incremental, everyday type of innovation. That is very much champion we want at the coalface, right? Done day to day in the business, delivered by the core business teams. And our role supporting that type of innovation is very much advisory, right? So Alex and Lynn and their teams are very much spending a long time with these teams, advising their long-term strategy, helping them understand the role technology can play. But really at that piece, we really want to empower the business to get on and do that themselves. And that community sort of helps deliver that. QBE Ventures' role is sort of more at the other end of the spectrum, which is looking at more strategic innovation. So longer term, higher risk, potentially a more disruptive flavor, if it pays off, higher failure rates. And then, so that's where we sort of anchor a lot of our effort. And so we naturally have this divide there where our role, if we're sort of to build a project team or if we're to go heavy into a particular thesis, it's angled more around the strategic impact of the technology. So that's where we put a lot of our efforts around uncovering the new. And then as we work with the business on that sort of more core or tactical stuff, we tend to really sort of have a lighter role, more advising, more thinking sort of, around how AI, for example, can influence a particular outcome or deliver more value versus another solution, for example.
Yeah. So you've taught strategic value, strategic impact. How do you assess value as a business, or how do you assess impact? So do you have like certain, success metrics that you as a unit are looking to achieve, and therefore, I don't know, the next year there's a funding unlocked and so on?
No, we have. So we're set up in terms of the fund. So we invest from QBE's balance sheet. That is. That's an allocation that I guess can grow over time. It doesn't have a defined period, and we obviously have a run budget or an OPEX budget to take care of the team and travel and the incidentals. And so in terms of, I guess, the KPIs, because we are so strategically focused, we don't have a financial KPI around internal rate of return or return on capital or anything like that. While we don't set out to lose money, and we're not going to be around long enough if we lose lots of money, that's not our core objective. So our core objective is really bringing strategic value to the business, and that's what we're incentivized around. And so we think of strategic value, there's lots of angles to that. That could just be thought leadership, right? Helping the business progress their knowledge or understanding, or help them shape their long-term strategy around a particular focus area. But then most of it is really around the ad hoc projects or the initiatives that we really run with, and value is determined on a per project basis. So it could be growth, profitable growth. It could be customer engagement. It could be cost reduction or efficiencies. So it's really driven on a per initiative basis. I think something else that's worth mentioning is the way we like to work with the business is we tend to be very much focused on the problem that's at hand. So we work closely with the business to understand that problem. We work closely to really understand the root cause and their perspective. And we really go into the engagement with ears wide open, right? And so it's very much a learning exercise for us. And then as we sort of progress through problem definition, solution validation, we don't ever go in with a particular technology in mind. We don't ever go in with a particular portfolio in mind or portfolio company in mind. So it's very much around starting with the basics. And then our approach allows us to work almost unencumbered in the sense of how we can solve the problem. So it may just be an off-the-shelf solution with a technology that's existed for a while, and it's really just about opening the business's eyes up to that potential. Others, it's something completely new, and we see an opportunity to work with a new partner. And if they're venture stage and tick all the right boxes, we could say, well, actually, if we can solve this one problem with this partner, there may be other problems that we can have a look at across the organization, and we feel their technology or their solution or their business model is transferable beyond the existing use case that we found. And in instances where we find that, that's really what then lends itself to an investment opportunity, right? Okay. So we really look deeper, and then we use the investment as a basis for that much deeper strategic partnership, where we can then say, okay, we can solve this problem now as phase one, but we think this could apply to this product in this region. Or have you ever thought about turning your business and pivoting it this way to help us solve that? And maybe there's something in that. So if those things stack up, then we'll make an investment, and that's what's driven our portfolio today.
Do you have any good examples of businesses that maybe where the partnership started, it moved across the business, the investment came after it's kind of flow through the company?
I'm laughing now because there's about 4 or 5 which I probably can't talk about just now that where we're really starting to see that start to flourish. I think one of the interesting things we were talking about offline is QBE. We don't have 3. We divide up into 3 dominant regions, 3 or 4 dominant regions, and the type and distribution of business in that region is in each region is quite unique. So we have a large crop business in North America. We have a consumer business in Australia. These aren't replicated all over the world. Our Asian business and its distribution of insurance in that region is vastly different to London markets, for example. And so, it takes a little bit of time as we work through these opportunities to say, okay, well, something that works in Australian SME is then going to naturally apply to British SME or UK SME, right? So we've got that. But we've definitely had instances more broadly in the innovation world within QBE where we've taken something globally. So cyber, for example, cyber is our first global product. We have a global head of cyber, Sønr. We've been working very closely with her as she tries to develop a value proposition that truly is global. And so we've got some good examples where the teams have worked on, say, leveraging generative AI for submission triage, right? That is definitely something where wherever you are in the world, we can replicate that opportunity. So we've built something in North America. It's being scaled into other regions now as a good example.
And then keeping with that sort of regional theme, so different kind of operational models or kind of focus areas of the business in different regions. Just from a kind of pure innovation perspective, I'm really interested in, especially sort of jumping here into the Sydney market and the wider Australian market, just the kind of the strengths of the local market versus rest of the world, also kind of the opportunities to strengthen. I think that maybe weaknesses is the right word, but let's turn it into a positive. But how do you see this kind of Australian market on a global in a global picture?
Yeah, the Australian market's definitely unique. I think there's some of particularly the UK market where I had a chance to work recently. I think from a strengths perspective, I do really see it as more digitally mature than some of the larger insurance markets around the world. We've had direct-to-consumer online offerings for a long time. A lot of the business that we place here or that we underwrite here, in SME, for example, is straight through process. I think somewhere in the region of 80+% of that business. And so we do see the Australian market as being digitally mature. And I think if you cast your mind back to the beginning of InsurTech, there were a couple of companies like Trove that came to Australia because because of that maturity, and it allowed them to sort of build out a proposition using Australia as a test market. So I do think there's a lot of strengths here. We have a lot of talent, I think, in the technology community here. And so that's definitely a plus, particularly for such a small market on a global comparison. I think what does make it difficult for InsurTech is the market or the competitive landscape here is vastly different. So like a lot of industries, insurance, underwriting on the carriers are sort of consolidated to sort of 3 or 4 large players. They have 75-80% of the market share. And that, I guess, duopoly type market is very difficult for startups. There's just not the number of players that we have in the other markets, and it's not as fragmented. And so what that means is that, you know, sometimes by working with one of those bigger players, it automatically excludes you from working with the others, even if there's no investment or there's nothing materially concrete there. The sheer competitive tension excludes that local growth. And so what we found here in the Australian InsurTech community is that you might work with 1, maybe 2 local players, and then you're looking overseas for that growth. And we've had some great growth. Cover Genius, Haast most recently, have now working with Aviva in the UK. And so we've got some good news stories here. But it's very difficult to get sort of that, you know, large market share locally. In the UK and in London, it's what I found most refreshing was just the strength of the innovation community around Lloyd's, and that sort of square mile. The talent there, the sheer sense of empowerment those resources have, those people have around driving innovation in their company, and the fact that in order to solve problems, you come together as a community and do that. I don't think we have that in Australia as much. We're certainly trying to build that in InsurTech Australia, but it's very difficult. Whereas I think in London markets, it's generally accepted that, you know, with the lead follow type structure that Lloyd's has, that you can partner with and work with your peers to develop something new.
Good stuff. Maybe the last question for you. QBE Ventures next 5 years. Where are you guys heading? What changes do you see? The world around us is moving fast. How do you guys keep pace with that?
I think the next couple of years are going to be really interesting for us. So we've been on this journey now, probably we've been here 5 years. Probably for the last 2 or 3, we've really focused our efforts across a number of core themes. And some investments we made around 18 months ago now are starting to work very well with the business. And we've now progressed the types of initiatives and the materiality of the initiatives to the point where they're much more significant. And so I think in the next couple of years, we're going to be delivering some big projects internally alongside the business. And they have the potential to really impact and contribute to the growth of QBE. So that's really exciting. We've moved from looking at these emerging spaces and making some small bets to driving much more meaningful projects. So I think as us and as journey that we've been on, it's great to be able to have built that credibility and that trust and be able to sort of run with those projects now. And that's just giving us so many more opportunities, I think, to add value back to the organisation, right? So whether that's really helping them understand and embrace AI at scale, whether that's really driving elements of our growth agenda or our transition, helping ensure the transition from a climate perspective. There's so many things now that we're really helping contribute to and being front and center with that it's really exciting.
Cool. James, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure chatting with you.
Anytime.
Yeah, good stuff. And hopefully we'll see you back in England someday soon. I don't know. Maybe just a trip, right?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'll be over towards the end of the year, mate, so we'll catch up.
Thanks. Please do tune in to our next series on Beyond Boundaries. It will be launching probably next Monday. So thanks very much. Thanks again, James.
No worries.